the throughput from journalism to healthcare to serving in Congress to now working in public affairs is to make it more about the other person than you make it about yourself. I would contend that I would not have moved up in any of my leadership positions if I was always making it about myself.
What do you think great leaders need to understand about building trust before building consensus?
For me, I think one of the biggest components of trust, taking it down to the simplest level, but doing what you say you're going to do. People will trust when you say something, it's going to happen.
Today on Leadership Unscripted, I'm honored to welcome former Congresswoman Cheri Bustos. During a decade in Congress, she served in some of the nation's most influential leadership roles. She helped shape policy and lead one of the largest political organizations in the country. And she built consensus through seasons of tremendous complexity.
It is just so incredibly important to teach the younger people also what those of us who have gone through life in our, maybe in our fourth career, or at least more toward the latter part of our careers. I talk about these things that I think are very important about earning trust. I say most people don't get it right is doing what you say you're going to do. Being true to your word is an extension of that.
Your thoughts a little bit. Your host, Greg Steely. You already did that.
Welcome to Leadership Unscripted.
That's one of the better ones I've heard. That's really good.
Today on Leadership Unscripted, I'm honored to welcome former Congresswoman Cheri Bustos to the show today. During a decade in Congress, she served in some of the nation's most influential leadership roles. She helped shape policy and lead one of the largest political organizations in the country. And she built consensus through seasons of tremendous complexity. Today, she continues that work as partner and co-chair at Mercury Public Affairs while investing in the next generation of leaders. Cheri, we are honored and thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steely. I appreciate you having me and look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. My first question. So just looking at your background, I'm so impressed by the amount of things you've done. You have been in so many different industries and really had just kind of served the public from the very beginning. So you've led in journalism, kind of where you began getting started, and in healthcare, and then Congress, and now you do a lot of public affairs and strategy around that. So in all those different chapters, what is one leadership principle that has just remained constant for you through this whole journey of what you've done?
Thanks for that question. I am in my fourth career now, and I will tell you that right out of school, my first job, I was a government and politics major at University of Maryland. Not that I never planned to run for office. That wasn't even anything I planned, but I had been around politics my entire life. My grandfather was a state rep. My dad, who started out as a journalist, then was a deputy press secretary for a couple governors, then a chief of staff to a lieutenant governor, state treasurer, secretary of state, and U.S. senator. So I've been around people in elected office my entire career. But so I get out of school and I think that, I want to work in government in some capacity. So I worked for the state Senate in Springfield, Illinois, and I hated it. And, that's like a really bad feeling, right? You think you're right. You're out of school. You have your degree. You think this is what you want to do. And I'm like, and I realized what I hated about it, because when I was exposed to politics, it was always more on the very outside level of politics, like going to events, knocking doors, going door to door, more the political side than sitting in an office and analyzing 50-page bills and writing a one-page synopsis. That's what I was doing. And I'm like, I do not want to do this the rest of my life. So I go back to school. I get a master's in journalism, and that job was perfect for me. I was a journalist for 17 years, absolutely perfect for me. It allowed me to interact with the public. I felt like it was a public servant in the way of you're informing people about things that they should, theoretically should know. And thought I'd do that for the rest of my life. And what happened in journalism, as you and your listeners and your followers know, it's really hard to make a go of it in journalism these days. And so I had already survived 3 rounds of layoffs. And I get in the middle of my 17th year, I get a call from the president of a health system in town. I had written a profile about a brand new CEO that had started there several months earlier. He liked how I interviewed him. He liked the story. And so they offer me this job to run their corporate communications. And I initially say, "Oh, I'm really honored that you would call me, but I love what I do." And my husband said, "Why would you not at least listen? You're not gonna retire from journalism because you will get laid off at some point in your career." So anyway, let me just get to the point here. But I ended up taking that, did that for 10 years. And every 10 years of my life, and I did this when I was in journalism, did it in healthcare, did it in Congress, and now I'm 3.5 years into this job I have now, running a public affairs firm in Illinois. But I reassess my life. I do a deep dive. Am I doing everything I want to do personally, for my family, professionally? So it was, at the 10-year mark in journalism, I went from reporting to editing for a while and investigative reporting. Then I stayed in healthcare for 10 years. I was a VP of corporate communications for a multi-state, multi-billion-dollar nonprofit health system. And then I ran for Congress, and I was there for 10 years. As I do that deep dive, though, I also like to take a look at, my relationships. And so it gets to your question about leadership. The throughput from journalism to healthcare to serving in Congress to now working in public affairs is to make it more about the other person than you make it about yourself. I would contend that I would not have moved up in any of my leadership positions if I was always making it about myself. I'm a relationship building person. I am outgoing probably to a fault, and I like to know people's stories. And so when you get to know people's stories, you get to know what their hopes are, what they want to accomplish in their lives. And you can, play off of that as you build your team, as you accomplish what you need to accomplish. And especially in politics where egos are, absolutely humongous. If you think what it takes to get to the United States Congress, just a lot of egos going on. So if you ask people about themselves, as opposed to always saying, well, I'm doing this and I have accomplished that, and this is my congressional district. So I would say, and I don't know if that's necessarily a leadership skill, but if you make it, whatever it is, your conversations, if you make it about other people, that will serve you well.
That's so good, Cheri. That is a leadership principle. Our founder, John Maxwell, always says, you have to add value before you extract value. Yeah, what you're saying is you've all in your career been about adding value to people first before you extract value, because you're going to extract value at some point, right? Like if you're a public servant running for office, you need votes, but you can't get those votes until you build the trust, right? You can't get consensus without the trust, and that's the value add. And so that leads me to the second question for you is, in your career, you're really been about bringing people together of different perspectives, right? Whether it was in journalism or healthcare or as a public servant, as a congresswoman, everybody has a different perspective. Not everybody who votes for you ends up loving you, right? I mean, everybody has a different view of how things work. So in today's climate, think about today's climate. What do you think great leaders need to understand about building trust before building consensus? So before getting people on board with you, why is it so important for us to build trust as leaders before we try to extract that value?
And I think it's incredibly important. And, trust is earned. I think about, especially of those 4 careers that we just went over, in politics and in government, that was probably an area where I did not go into most of my early relationships with trust at the outset. When you're right out of school and you're younger, I think it's more natural to be trusting. But over time, you learn, and that trust does have to be earned. So for me, I think one of the biggest components of trust, and this is taking it down to the simplest level, but doing what you say you're going to do. And that was an incredibly important part of our congressional office. For any one thing that I was invited to or asked to speak at or to do that I could say yes to, there were anywhere from 5 to 10 other offers. So the incoming is constant. And as you might imagine, I mean, there's a lot of really good opportunities when you are a member of Congress. And our rule was that if we said yes to something, we were going to do it. And it didn't matter if a better offer came in, because there's always going to be something else. And it's like, oh man, I'm going to do that because that's going to be a lot cooler than this thing. So that was our rule, is if we said yes to something, that we were going to do it. And so that is really important. I don't know if this is so much on the trust part of it, but not only doing what you say you're going to do, kind of an extension of that is being true to your word. Like when I go in and I talk to younger people, which is one of my favorite things to do. I'm at the latter part of my career now. This is my fourth and final career, other than when I'm going to be a world famous artist and documentary filmmaker and a pianist and a great guitar player and all this stuff that I'm going to do in the next 10 years. But it is just so incredibly important to teach the younger people also what those of us who have gone through life in our, maybe in our fourth career, or at least more toward the latter part of our careers, to share that. And so when I would go in and talk, Greg, about, to high school kids, I would go to a lot of high schools. I go to a lot of colleges now. There's a program called Congress to Campus, and I'm going to be going to Ithaca in a couple months here. I'm going to Temple University in a month or so. I talk about these things that I think are very important about earning trust. Number one, and I say most people don't get it right, is doing what you say you're going to do. And being true to your word is an extension of that. But also show gratitude. Like Greg, you didn't get to your position without the help of a lot of people, right?
Right.
I didn't get to Congress or to grow in my journalism career or work in healthcare or now this without the help of a lot of people. And so show that you're thankful to the people who help you. And the trust part of that is that while, my name was always on the door outside of my the Longworth House office building, it was all that 18 staff that was in that office day in and day out that helped me be as good as we could possibly be as a congressional office. So how I show gratitude, I'm going to give you a couple really quick examples. When I was running for office, you always have these volunteers. Like politics is full of volunteers. And so the people watching, listening, whatever, think about in your own life who those types of, volunteers are, people who help you one way or another. So I would call every Sunday. I would ask our team who, went outside in the cold and knocked doors, who knocked a ton of doors, who made a ton of phone calls, who went above and beyond in this last week. And I would get a list. I mean, typically I was making, 5, 6, 7 calls a Sunday. And I would call them and I would just say, thank you so much for doing this. And then it was also like that encouragement because we had to keep going. Every election cycle, you got to keep going.
Yeah.
So it was a way to say, thank you. Let's keep going. So showing that gratitude, I will tell you that most were very surprised that I was taking the time to call. The other thing is I write notes. I'm still, and I will say this, that might be viewed as like, oh, that's like older person's thing. It is not. Take the time to say, thank you to somebody. We just did a really nice fundraiser in our office in DC and had a great turnout. And one of our junior staffers did all of the back end work. I mean, all of it. Ordered the food, got the name tags made, got interns to greet our guests, all of that. So, right as we were getting on this, I was writing a thank you note to Tharoon, who did all that, and I will hand deliver that to him. And if I can't hand deliver it, I buy stamps by the hundreds, and I am always mailing notes for people who have helped me. So I think those are, whether all of that is intertwined with trust, but there's nothing more important, in my opinion, though, of doing what you say you're going to do. And over time, you realize how rare that is, that people do what they say they're going to do. And it is a tremendous way to build trust. People will trust that when you say something, it's going to happen.
I love that, the simplicity of that, Cheri. Like that's something that you and I both learned as kids, right? I mean, we learned that from our parents or our grandparents, that they were, I don't know about your lineage, but my parents and grandparents, they were hard workers. I mean, my dad and my grandfather worked on a train. Like that's what they did. The conductor and an engineer, like show up every day, committed. You couldn't miss work. You did what you were supposed to do, and you delivered. And what you're saying is this, it's a simple statement, but we're seeing a drift from that in many ways. And so I would ask you, as you travel around and you're really a proponent of kind of building a bench, getting this next generation into levels of leadership and connecting them to something bigger and more significant than themselves. How do you look for, or what qualities do you look for in tomorrow's leaders? What do you think are the qualities that even our audience can say, hey, we need to help identify these qualities in the next generation, and then help motivate them to put some fuel on that fire so those qualities become bigger in the world?
Yeah, so I'll bring this down to a level of something that I've been very involved with, but I have recruited candidates to run for Congress for many years. And I had an official role doing that in the 2016 election cycle, which was it was really hard to recruit candidates that cycle. It really was. Go forward 2 more years, and I'm thinking I want to have more people to choose from, and I want to focus on younger people, because if you look around Washington D.C., there's a lot of old people, we're getting younger people involved. We were just out at a fundraiser in L.A., and some people who were helping with it said, look around this room, and it was a lot of people with gray hair and canes and a few wrinkles. And it's like, man, we gotta figure out what we're gonna do to help the next generation, or get the next generation involved. So we agreed that next time we go back out there, everybody who comes has to bring a younger person. It can be a neighbor, it can be a niece, it can be a daughter, it can, whoever, but you got to bring a younger person. And then we're also you got to look for these ways to help the younger generation, right? And so these are fundraisers. We raise money for candidates running, but we're going to have a young professionals rate. So it's not going to cost what I could spend to support a candidate. It's going to be more than what somebody right out of school is going to be able to afford. So, things like that. So when it was really hard to recruit and we're going into the next election cycle, I decided to start this program called Build the Bench, and started it from scratch, built the whole curriculum, brought in speakers who were experts in various areas of running for office, which the fundamentals of running for office for anybody who wants to run is, unfortunately, you got to raise money, but you also have to have a grassroots organization, people who are going to go out and help you. That part that we were talking about before, the people you have to be grateful for. You got to have a message. Like, what's your message? Why do you want to run? Why are you motivated to run? What are you going to do for people? And then now especially today, you've got to have a digital strategy. Because it's the way you got to communicate with a lot of people. So we teach that. And so we built this whole thing up. And how we would bring people in is we would ask for recommendations. But if I met somebody who I was impressed with, I would always ask, you ever thought of running for office? And many times it's the first time anybody's been asked that. And it plants a seed. And I always like to see, I try to stay in touch with people who say, I will tell you the most common answer from women is, oh, I just see myself as behind the scenes. Or I don't know if I could take all of the public criticism. Allegedly, you have to ask a woman to run for office 7 times before she will. I mean, and I will tell you from experience, it's very different from recruiting a man and recruiting a woman. It is very different. And so, you got to meet people. Like, how do you get past that? And so we started that program as a way to get more young people, get people from diverse backgrounds, get people, there's a lot of press these days, like when you have a blue collar candidate. Well, that's the kind of people we were recruiting, people in labor organizations and teachers and principals, but kind of like a non-traditional way of getting into politics, which is going to make our nation a much better place, is to have people from these diverse backgrounds, from rural America, from, the areas where it is harder to recruit. The district that I represented had 10,000 family farms, 90,000 labor households, and it was very much a blue collar district. And I'm a Democrat, but it was a Trump district. And so I will tell you what that teaches you is, first of all, you go into any conversation, and my goal was always just to walk away from that and people say, she's not that bad. Because I had to get a lot of crossover votes to win, and I've never lost an election, run 7 straight, 2 for city council and 5 for Congress. But part of it is kind of these leadership things of, going into situations, making it more about the other person. If you say you're going to do something, if they need help with their Social Security or their Medicare or anything else, then you say, I'm going to have somebody follow up with you, and we're going to do what we can to help you. Making sure that you do that follow up. Again, all the people who help you, expressing your gratitude, all of that helped me. It helped me politically be elected in a very tough swing district, and it also has helped me in my career. So I hopefully I answered that question. That was kind of like, all kinds of turns and twists on that one.
So good. Well, I think what I loved about that, and then we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
To finish, but what I loved about that is just you talking about going back to diversity and going back how you build trust before consensus. You had to do that. You had to build trust across lines, right? And to be coming into this as a female leader, as you talked about, and talked about how long it takes for a female politician to get on board with even wanting to run at that point.
Yeah.
And the way you did to be reelected so many times. I just think it speaks to not only your commitment, but your level of leadership. And I hope everybody picks up on that. All right, here we go. Rapid fire, just a couple questions. You don't know these are coming, so you got to be
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Ready. All right.
Ready.
First question. If you could meet for 30 minutes of coffee with any leader, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Abraham Lincoln, without question. I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, so you were surrounded by Lincoln's home, Lincoln's tomb, New Salem, where he got the log splitter nickname. No, because I think he's just one of the most phenomenal leaders through very difficult times in the history of America.
I would say 90% of easily 90% of the people that are on this podcast, our guests, say Abraham Lincoln.
And who did the others say? George Washington?
Yeah, either George Washington, or they would say, somebody obscure. Some say Martin Luther King Jr., some others would say that. But yeah, that pretty amazing. All right, second question. When you're not building the bench, when you're not traveling around the country, when you're not figuring out technology like you had to do before this, what would people find you doing away from all of that you really enjoy, that allows you to unplug and just sell?
Oh, wow. I was a college athlete. And so I am active. I'm outside all the time. So I'm either shooting hoops, I'm playing tennis. I don't run anymore. I got 2 hips replaced, but taking a long walk. I love nature, love being outside, love going to the gym. It's something around sports and physical activity.
What sport did you play in college?
I played basketball and volleyball. Now I should say, because I'm a University of Maryland grad, and it makes it sound like I'm a D1 2-sport athlete. I played at a small liberal arts school called Illinois College before I went to Maryland. I am in the Sports Hall of Fame, but Illinois College Sports Hall of Fame. But that said, it was a D3 school, so I don't want to overstate my athletic ability. But I do love sports, and for my era, I was a decent enough sport or athlete to play there.
I played basketball in college, and I played at a D3 as well, and I ran track. But I just tell everybody I played basketball in college. That's all right. I love Kerry Williams, by the way, one of my favorite coaches of all times. A Terrapin guy, just loved him. So
awesome.
Thank you so much for today, and thank you. I mean, this has been, for me, it's been just your passion for leadership and your passion for what you do. I just want to let you know it just comes out of you so easily. And I think the audience, you're going to love this. So thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate all you do. And we're cheering for you as you enter the next 10 years. That's your number, 10 years as you enter the next 10 years. So thank you very much.
It is. Well, thank you, Greg. Really appreciate you having me. And you're really good at this, and enjoyed our conversation very much.
Thank you, Cheri. And I hope you enjoyed our time with Cheri. You're going to learn a lot from her. And thanks for being with us.